Hello everyone, this is the fourth video in our web series, and today I'm going to talk about comprehensions, which is the last part of the GRE verbal section. As you would see in your books, Princeton Review and Manhattan, they have divided comprehension into two sections. One they simply call reading comprehension, and the other they call critical thinking or critical reasoning. They both have to do with comprehension, but we would proceed the way they have, and I have also distributed the two sorts of questions thematically. So today in the first video we are going to talk about reading comprehension. Now reading comprehension, as I've told you before, you would come across roughly 7 questions from reading comprehensions. These are going to be lengthy. As I've told you before, part of the GRE is they are trying to confuse you. They are trying to create scenarios where you make an error. So you always have to look out for it. The first few things, the very basic things that this video is going to cover that you all ought to know is, firstly, these readings are going to be heavy, intensive readings. What I mean by that is the passages that you get are, usually speaking, very difficult to read, precisely because he's trying to do that. He's trying to give you way too much information. He will talk about topics that you do not know about, topics which are either very technical or have to do with some discipline in liberal arts. The point is the passages are going to be badly written and they are going to be very dense, which means you would need a lot of attention to read these passages. The first thing that I want to tell you from the very outset is, because you are going to be reading your guides, in some of the GRE guides, you are told to not read the entire passage. Look at the question and directly move to whichever portion of the comprehension the question deals with. That is a very big no. You are not supposed to do that. In my experience, that never works. As I said, these texts are very dense. If you simply focus, and the questions are never straightforward. I mean, there are questions where you would be asked to look at a passage and pick something out from it, but it's never that straightforward, which means when reading passages, the first thing that we have to be very careful about is we must get an overall understanding of what the story is about, which means when you are reading a passage, it is all about breaking what is being said, which is very technical, into a very simplified version or a story that you can tell yourself. It is when you have that version that you can argue either which way. So from that perspective, it never helps to look at the question or to read in part. So the thing which becomes very important, because as I have told you earlier, GRE is all about time management. You would be given lengthy, dense texts, and there would be questions from those texts. Most of the information in these texts is completely useless, and you would not be questioned from that information. So the skill that is very important for reading comprehension is learning how to skim texts. Skimming is when you move through a text whereby you have a general understanding of what is going on in the text without being bogged down by the detail in it. Again, you can always come back to the detail, but the first reading or the actual original reading has to do with getting an understanding, acquiring an understanding of what the text is about. Some tips that we can talk about in this regarding skimming is, the very first thing you need to know is always read the first 2 to 3 lines of the paragraph very carefully, because if you have, say, a 4-paragraph text, the first 2 to 3 lines give you a certain understanding of what the paragraph is about, what the author is arguing. From that point forward, once you understand the first 2 to 3 lines, either the author is going to continue with the same line of argument, that is, either will provide evidence for his claim or provide you with assumptions, or he is going to contradict or move in a different direction. So if you simply have an understanding of what a paragraph is about, you can always come back to it from that very point where either he changes direction or is providing evidence for his argument. Which means when you have read the first 3 lines, you don't really have to spend too much time reading the rest of the paragraph. You can skim it and very quickly move ahead to the next paragraph. Then you apply the same technique there, and this way a text which would be 4 paragraphs, which if you were to read at normal speed would roughly take you 4 to 5 minutes, you can this way read that text within a minute, and that is our target. The things that I'm going to talk about today and in our next session have more to do with how to read. The final part, the question aspect of reading comprehension. I'll talk about the questions in detail in our sessions. I'm not going to talk about them in the video because they are very specific, and the method that we apply in trying to answer is the process of elimination that I have discussed earlier as well. The thing that you need to know from this point of view, people especially who are not attending my classes, is that when you are reading comprehension, firstly, never read selectively. The point is you have to read the entire text. You cannot forego anything. The second thing is you are not reading every single detail. You are not obsessing over a word or a particular paragraph that you do not understand. The reading is about getting a general understanding idea of what the text is about and nothing else.